Anyhow, we're going to look at, I was saying that we're going to look at a text called Rain of Abundance in the evening, so stay tuned. But it is raining here today in Lampeter, but that's also good because loving kindness, in terms of the four elements, of the five elements, is connected to the element of water. There are these elemental associations for the four immeasurables that can be established if we look at the different charts and tables in the Tibetan tradition and link different things to each other. So loving kindness is connected to water, so it's watery today, so that's fairly good. And we will start by practicing the same method that we applied yesterday in the morning, and that is the practice of the four-fold vision quest. So let's find a comfortable stationary position. We begin the formal practice by spending a few moments with the different parts of our body, adjusting them as necessary. And then bringing our awareness all the way down to the ground to touch the earth mentally by noticing the sensations in the parts of the body that are currently in contact with the ground. Once again, allowing our body to start releasing tension in those areas, including our feet and toes, our legs, the pelvic floor, the space of the torso, the shoulders, upper arms, hands and fingers, then returning to the shoulders, exploring the facial muscles, allowing our breath to move naturally, without any control from our side. And noticing the underlying stillness of the body. Being still and being aware of the stillness for a little while, releasing deliberate movement and physical tension with each new exhalation. And then also as a preliminary step to the actual meditation, spending a few moments generating appreciation for the opportunity to practice that we have right now. The unique combination of causes and conditions that allows us to spend these days cultivating the qualities of wisdom and kindness, along with the associated states of tenderness, mindfulness, introspection, and so forth. We have the outer conditions for that. We have the practices themselves. We have the inspirational force of the lineages supporting us. And we have our incredible potential that we can connect to by doing these practices. So with a sense of appreciation, we can turn towards the main method, in which we explore 4 questions, starting with, how do I envision my own genuine flourishing, genuine well-being, genuine happiness, that I would like to one day realize or attain? Having posed this question, we allow our mind to present us with a vision or a general understanding, a general idea. And then we respond to that general idea or vision with the wish of loving kindness for ourselves, with the thought, may it be so. May I reach or bring about this genuine flourishing. And then as we continue breathing naturally, each exhalation can be used to breathe life into this vision. And also to strengthen the aspiration, may it be so. And then for a few moments, even imagining that we have attained this flourishing and seeing how that feels. And then moving on to the second question of what types of resources, what types of support do I need from the world around me in order to fulfill this genuine well-being, to bring it about? What types of help and assistance do I require? Once there is a general idea or a general vision, we respond to it with the wish of, may it be so. May I receive and be able to accept these types of assistance. And while still breathing naturally, we can use the inhalation to imagine bringing these resources closer to ourselves. drawing them into our domain of experiences. And then for a few moments, even imagining that we have received and accepted all these types of assistance, and seeing how that feels. And then the third question of how do I need to change and transform in order to experience this genuine flourishing? What habits do I need to release? What qualities do I need to cultivate or uncover? May it be so. With each new cycle of breathing, we can imagine ourselves transforming in all these ways, while still maintaining this powerful aspiration. May it be so. May I transform in a way that would support my genuine flourishing. Then for a few moments imagining that we have indeed transformed in these ways, seeing how that feels. And then the fourth question of, in this vision, in this understanding of genuine flourishing, what gift or what gifts do I want to share with the world? May it be so. Breathing naturally and imagining that with each exhalation, we're offering these gifts to all the other beings, therefore transforming the overall interdependence of things. And then imagining that this gift has been offered, has been received, has transformed the interdependent fabric of reality for each and every being. And then releasing these aspirations, the imagery, the general ideas, and simply resting in open spaciousness with no particular reference point. Then coming back to our body to notice the sensations and the stillness. And then slowly introducing a tiny bit of movement as we approach the end of this specific meditation. And then we'll go into another meditation, this time starting with some tenderness for ourselves, and then going into loving kindness for ourselves, and that will be our emphasis for today. We could easily spend the entire retreat just practicing loving kindness for ourselves, and in a way we will, because it will always be the starting point, as it should be, according to the teachings of the Buddha. But today we're going to work exclusively with ourselves as an object, and then at the end of each session there will be sort of a tiny bookend of thinking of all beings for a little while, just to plant that positive interdependence there, because eventually that is where we're going. But first we need to work with ourselves quite a lot, and we will explore different techniques and different approaches for that today. So, as an act of kindness for ourselves, we can first stretch a little bit, move if it's necessary. Make sure our knees are comfortable, our hips are comfortable. If we want to switch the position and go into the supine position or the upright position or move to a chair, we're being kind with ourselves. And then finding a comfortable stationary position. We begin the formal practice by adjusting the different parts of the body in accordance with our needs and preferences. And then this time, instead of doing a body scan, we can go straight for the waves of breathing. Noticing the tactile waves coming through our body with each inhalation and exhalation. And allowing these waves to gradually take away all the types of tension and all the types of deliberate movement that we don't need right now. All the way up to the most subtle movements of our fingers, the most subtle types of tension in our face, and so forth. Keeping our mindful awareness on the tactile waves and using the introspection side of our mind to occasionally check whether we have become distracted, whether we have busied ourselves with stories, memories, images, and so forth. Again and again coming back to the breath. And then noticing this very being breathing here. Who is experiencing the breath. This being with this field of material energy, this field of mental energy, this name. And especially with this underlying wish to be happy and to be free from suffering. And then we hold this being, ourselves, in tender, affectionate awareness. As if it was a tiny, vulnerable, fluffy thing placed upon our palms, or a newborn baby that we were holding with affection and care. Still breathing naturally, not forcing the breath in any way, but using it if we wish to add a bit more intensity to this warmth in our awareness. To give ourselves a stronger invisible hug if we wish. Again and again coming to this object when we get distracted and catch ourselves becoming distracted. If we're experiencing any restlessness, feeling fidgety or uncertain about the entire process or agitated somehow, we can release that with the exhalation, going deeper into the very simple experience of tenderly holding ourselves. If by contrast we are feeling somewhat dull, there's some laxity. If we're feeling sleepy, we can use the same tenderness to wake ourselves up a little bit, appreciating the object, being fascinated by this being that we're holding in our mental embrace. Offering our full attention. And then, with that full attention, we can recognize the very simple fact of us wanting to be happy and have the causes of happiness. We recognize that underlying wish. Along with the fact that we also have some vision for how to progress towards genuine flourishing. Ideally, that vision would include both the outer or hedonic types of happiness in a dignified and meaningful manner, to a dignified and meaningful degree, and the boundless inner happiness of eudaimonic well-being, the genuine well-being that comes from the inside, from getting in touch with our basic goodness and uncovering our amazing potential. And also from what we offer to the world. So with this recognition, with this understanding, with this vision, we allow our tenderness to crystallize into the wish of loving kindness. May I be happy and have the causes of happiness. And having generated this wish, we rest in its meaning. We rest in the aspiration itself. Until it starts fading in our mind. And when it does, we simply mentally repeat the aspiration again, reinstating it and abiding in it. And then we generate it again, and when necessary once again, and so forth. May I be happy and have the causes of happiness. Once again, if we wish, we can use the exhalation to add some energy to this aspiration. And what's important is that the object that this aspiration is directed towards is this very being here. Me. Each one of us. And the mechanism is that each time there is some kind of inner obstacle, a distraction, an inner objection, a strange emotion arising all of a sudden, disturbing thoughts, anything of that nature, we deal with it by simply returning to the aspiration. Everything gets channeled into the aspiration itself. May I be happy and have the causes of happiness. Still breathing naturally, not trying to force the breath in any way. Making sure the body is relaxed and stable, abiding in its stillness and deepening that stillness. And the spaciousness of the mind is configurated, is transformed into the aspiration of loving kindness, stemming from the underlying tenderness, our ability to care. May I be happy and have the causes of happiness. Sending that wish into the depths of our being. And not coldly, it is stemming from affectionate awareness. We'll spend one more minute in this mode of again and again wishing for that happiness and its causes. And then releasing the aspirations to simply rest in spaciousness without a reference point. Then bringing our awareness back to the body to ground ourselves there, touching the earth with our awareness. And very slowly introducing some movement to the body as we return to our shared space of practice. So we quite often in the Tibetan tradition are invited to start the practice of loving kindness proper by working with ourselves, and we'll talk about why that is the case. That is true for all the traditions. But in the Tibetan tradition specifically, the wording often used to express the aspiration of loving kindness is exactly the wording that we used right now. May I have happiness and the causes of happiness. Very simple, very elegant, and that is then extended to all the other beings over time. That wording is different from what is used in many other cases by some other traditions. For example, in the Pali tradition of practice, we sometimes start with a simpler aspiration of, may I be happy. So the part about the causes of happiness is not added. But it is added in the Indo-Tibetan approach. Why? It adds this element of wisdom to the process, because we immediately recognize, we are forced to recognize by using this phrase, no, happiness must have its causes. There are causes to happiness, and therefore if I want to be happy, I need to cultivate those causes. So it's no longer an expectation to somehow bump into happiness magically, or to have that happiness descend upon us because some omnipotent deity sends it our way. The causes of happiness have to be assembled, and once they are in place, once everything is acting and working properly, that's when happiness will be experienced. So, a wonderfully intelligent way of wording it. That being said, if we do want to personally work with the phrase, may I be happy, that is absolutely fine and valid as well, as long as somewhere in the corner of our mind there is that recognition that yes, causes will still have to be assembled. And there's also absolutely no rule that says we should only work with one specific phrasing, one specific wording. In fact, the most of today will go into us experimenting with different wordings that can be used to generate loving kindness, because in the Pali tradition, in addition to this very brief phrase of may I be happy, there are also more elaborate formulas that are used. They come, one of them that we will look at in the next session comes from the Buddha himself, but it was popularized by Buddhaghosa, who is a very important commentator in the Pali tradition, originally out of India, but he's strongly connected to Sri Lankan Buddhism, and he is also the person behind the Pali canon itself, the person who organized it in the way that it is familiar to us today. So Buddhaghosa is, of course, very influential, not just for his work with the suttas and commentaries on the suttas, but also because he wrote an incredible text by the name of Path of Purification, or Visuddhimagga, and that is the text that Lama Alan Wallace uses as the reference point for teaching loving kindness in the way that it was presented in the Pali tradition. There are other texts of similar nature, Path of Liberation by Arhat Upatissa and some others, and they all present fairly similar structures for working with loving kindness, where this fourfold phrasing is emphasized sometimes. And that was also the set of loving kindness phrases that Dipa Ma offered to some of her students. However, if we look at the modern insight meditation movement in the United States and now across the world, because it kind of affects all of us in a way, it came from Dipa Ma and some other teachers in Burma, in India, in Thailand, primarily those three countries. It had some influence from the Zen tradition, it had some influence from the Tibetan tradition, and now the Tibetan influence is becoming more and more prominent in that movement. But overall, absorbing all these different influences, the popular insight meditation movement then sought to find ways to make these practices truly accessible for everyone. And within that, they used a trick that is not at all forbidden, not at all against the rules, and that is offering people an opportunity to express loving kindness by using their own sets of phrases that would be very simple and straight to the point. So we'll look at some of those as well, because indeed, the loving kindness phrases that we use can make this experience come more alive for us personally, especially at this initial stage. Once we get some experience, then any set of phrases might work. And eventually, when we reach a relatively high stage, we don't need phrases at all anymore. We just go straight into the aspiration itself. The gross conceptuality is no longer needed. And that is how Dipa Ma could avoid having thoughts, gross conceptual thoughts, and at the same time be full of loving kindness all the time. She didn't need the gross conceptuality of that nature anymore. But we do start with it because phrases help us activate the aspiration and hold it. And at the same time, there is a little bit of a technical mistake that is sometimes made when people start loving kindness practice and try to concentrate with it. Loving kindness practice is originally a concentration technique. Buddhaghosa places it in the concentration section of his manual. So does Upatissa. And it is a practice that can lead us to the full attainment of shamatha, this profound state of concentration, in which we would be able to hold the object without any laxity and any dullness whatsoever for at least 4 hours. So a very advanced concentration stage that is quite necessary eventually on the path. And that can be fully realized through loving kindness practice, or through compassion practice, or through empathetic joy practice. Equanimity is also kind of there, but it is not usually presented as the first one in that sequence. However, these other three can definitely be used for that purpose. And when we're reading about these practices, sometimes we can read that, well, the object of concentration in loving kindness as a shamatha technique is the phrases of loving kindness. That is technically incorrect, but it is a simplified description offered to people so that they know, oh, I can just go back to the phrases and work with them. And that's very simple, very elegant, very accessible. It does offer the sense of ease, but strictly speaking, from a technical point of view, that is not correct. The object of concentration in loving kindness concentration practice is sentient beings, either one being or a group of beings or all beings. And there's also a practice in which we eventually go beyond any particular reference points, and loving kindness is just radiated boundlessly. But we have to go through many stages before that becomes truly active for us. So the object of concentration is a being, but the mode of attending to a being is configured through these loving kindness phrases. So I'm looking at a being and I configure my way of perceiving that being, the type of awareness that is projected towards that being by using these phrases. So it's as if I'm putting a colored filter in front of a flashlight, and that light assumes the color of that colored filter. My awareness in general is kind of neutral until loving kindness becomes a deeply habitual thing for me. The awareness of a fully enlightened being is not neutral. It is, as we have established by referencing Dzogchen teachings, boundless compassion, Tukje Kunkhya. But we're not there yet. Our awareness is usually at least neutral, sometimes also hostile or jealous or envious or arrogant and so forth. We have all these nasty ways of attending to others. And so to avoid that and to transform all of that into something meaningful, we use this filter of the phrases that allows us to transform our awareness into a warm glow, nourishing glow, positive glow, loving glow. And it can be as simple as thinking or saying, may you be happy, or may I be happy. We start with ourselves. Or it can be slightly more elaborate. And in the next session, we will talk about 3 major sets of techniques that are used to generate loving kindness across multiple traditions. But before that, we're about to embark on our walking meditation period. And of course, if it's still raining, you can absolutely do practice anywhere else. You can practice in your room, you can practice here. There's many options, and it doesn't necessarily have to be walking. But it can be walking, and walking meditation, even if we're doing it very formally, only needs us to have enough space to do 5 steps or 7 steps or 10 steps, then turn back and do 5, 7 or 10 steps in the backwards direction. And so doing this back and forth. And in addition to everything we have discussed yesterday, and those practices can still be used in these periods for personal practice. You can still do harvesting joy if you want. You can still rest in stillness. You can work with waves of breathing and so forth. But since we have reached now loving kindness, a simple way to apply it in formal walking meditation practice is to combine each slow step with the aspiration. So you take one step, you place your foot on the ground, and as your foot is being placed on the ground, you powerfully think, may I be happy and have the causes of happiness. And you rest with that. And then you move your other foot, you put it down, and with that, you once again generate that thought, may I be happy and have the causes of happiness. And this way you can make 5 steps or 7 or 10 and then turn back and walk back. Or you can just keep walking. If you're walking outside, this just can be an endless process. But it doesn't necessarily have to be this slow, extra slow type of walking, even though that's very beneficial. Because if you do want to take a walk outside and you don't want to appear to be doing anything exotic, you can just be taking a regular walk. No need to slow it down. But while you're walking, you're generating this thought of, may I be happy, have the causes of happiness, again and again and again and again. And later we will also start projecting it towards others, but for now, we're just working on ourselves, with ourselves. And that's an experiment to undertake in the next 45 minutes. And then at the end of all of these experiments, there is some benefit in just taking some notes about your experiences, if you wish. It's not strictly necessary, but it's just for your personal observation, because some people are doing this retreat for the second time, or maybe we'll do it again at some point. I think we could easily do this retreat every 6 months, personally, not this specific community necessarily, because it takes a lot of effort to organize something like this. But we could regularly go back to all of these practices and see a change in how it all feels when we revisit it, even though we're sort of repeating the same dance, going through the same steps of learning about what it's like to be in retreat and what is appreciation and what is tsewa, all of those sorts of things. Each time we go through this circle, each new spiral, or each time we go through the circle, which becomes a spiral, would bring us deeper and deeper and deeper into these experiences. So let's experiment with that. And so I'm wishing you all a joyful period of practice. And I'll go deal with the reception because I locked myself out. Yay!